Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Harrisburg City Council Legislative Session, Tuesday, October the 10th, 2017. I am calling this meeting to order at 6:06 p.m. Mr. Wachowski, please do the roll call.
Mr. Allett?
Yes.
Ms. Daniels?
Present.
Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Mattson?
Here.
Mr. Majors?
Here.
Ms. Williams?
Here. Thank you. Mr. Mattson, please do the invocation.
Yeah, I'd like to start off with a moment of silence for the lives lost in California. Fire there, it seems every week we're getting a new natural disaster. And I'd like to, if there's any staff or people in the community with family and friends in either Puerto Rico or Texas or in California currently that have lost their loved ones and are actually our prayers with them. So with that, I'd like to have a moment of silence. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Mattson.
I'd like to do the invocation. Oh, that was it.
Yes, that was the invocation. We're gonna try. We putting you in preacher. You gonna be in preacher mode here? Okay. All right. Yeah, you want to continue? Okay. All right. Okay. Wow. Moving on to the Pledge of Allegiance, Mr. Allett, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Allett. Before we move on to communications, I'd just like to make an announcement, and it's regarding our vacant city council seat. As everyone may have heard, Councilwoman Destiny Hodges submitted her resignation effective October 6, 2017. Therefore, City Council is tasked with filling the vacancy with 30 days from that date. We have considered several options due to the fact that the vacancy will only be for a few months. The next several months is a very important time period as we review, discuss, and approve a budget for the City of Harrisburg for the year 2018. Therefore, we have made a decision to appoint Asha Green to fill the vacancy, which will allow her to participate in the budget process and discussions a few months early before she starts her full term. I want to take this opportunity to wish Ms. Destiny Hodges well on the next chapter of her life. I want to thank her for her service on council, and most importantly, her friendship. Additionally, I want to thank Ms. Asha Green for her willingness to jump right into the budget process and join our team a few months early. I know it was a difficult decision for her to depart from the Harrisburg School Board, and we really appreciate her willingness to serve. We're very excited to have Asha involved with the budget process, and we hope to have her sworn in before our next legislative session on October 24th. Thank you. Moving on to communications, a presentation from Harrisburg Housing Authority on Summer Youth Program. Good evening.
Good evening.
Please identify yourself.
Yes, I'm Sengor Mans. I'm the Chief Executive Officer with the Harrisburg Housing Authority. And to my left is Clarence Watson, who is the Program Director for our Summer Youth Program.
Thank you. Mr. Mans.
So before I begin, I think that it goes without saying that this program and its evolved nature could not have happened without the support of the City Council. It could not have happened without the support of the mayor, to my right. And we had some other folks, but it's incumbent upon me to make sure that I acknowledge the overwhelming support that we received from the City Council and from the mayor's office. As some people know, others probably do not know, the city had contributed and provided a very generous amount of funding for this program, $127,500. I don't care what city you're from, that's exceptional. And what that meant was 89 kids actually were able to, over a 5-week, technically 6 weeks, but 5 weeks of actual work, the orientation week, they got to kind of hang out. But for 5 weeks of actual work, got to do things that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to do over the course of that 5-week period. What we've provided for you is a summary of much of the work that was done. We've also provided in the report, and actually since I have the mayor here, I'll go ahead and give him the extra copy if he wants a copy of it. Sure. What's also included are some of the letters. So one of the things that Mr. Watson is going to talk a little bit about are some of the things that we actually have these kids do. A lot of folks probably thought of this program as just a litter retrieval process, a program in which we just go out and we pick up trash. It's so much more than that. It's so much more than that. The program, when at its inception, started on the Hack campus, the Midtown campus. It evolved to not only the Hack campus, but also to the Harrisburg University facility as well. It was, is that me making that noise?
Yes.
I apologize. What exactly?
Just back it up a little bit.
Back it up a little bit.
Back what up?
This microphone.
This way?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was one of you for a second. I was like, wow, somebody just tapping their pen or something on me.
It's you.
So I apologize. I didn't know it was me. So anyway, the concept was really about trying to make sure that we have these kids grow, and that's what we would call it, the summer growth program, not the litter program or the pollution prevention program or something like that. And so as a part of this program, what we had the kids do was spend half of their time in the field cleaning, and then half their time in the classroom, as some of you already know. And what you'll see is an encapsulation describing a lot of the things that they did both in and outside the field, including the pictures. And you'll see on the Harrisburg campus, you'll see on the Hack campus, you'll see the on-track program. Yeah, there are a number of pictures that we included in the packet that demonstrate the level of intensity that these kids went through to try to finish this program. And most importantly, and most significantly, the impact is described in their journals, which is a part of the program as well. They actually described what it meant to them to be in this program. These are not our words. These are their words. We did not ask them to say any particular thing other than what did this program mean for you as an individual in this program. So with that, I'm going to ask that, oh, by the way, just so you know, the program in total cost about $220,000. So your contribution was obviously the lion's share of that contribution, or that total, but it was about $220,000 all in. So with that, I'm going to introduce Clarence Watson. He's the program director. He's been doing this now. This is going on our 4th year. This was our 4th year. As most of you know, it started with, what was it, 25 kids?
Yeah, 25.
Started with 25 kids. 2nd year went to 40 kids. 3rd year, 45 kids. This year, with the help of the president and her insistence to try to get to 100, we were able to get up to 89. So we're working our way there. Okay. So with that, I'll introduce Mr. Watson.
All right, thank you. How's everybody doing today? Good?
Fine, thank you.
Like in the report, you know, I was honored for seeing Horton Housing Authority in the city to give me an opportunity to educate our kids on this level. And I've always believed that what this program does is how our school district should be ran. You know, just zero tolerance. I mean, our kids have that ability. And the money gave me access to their mind. I would always say that their mind is like a garden. And the $1,500 just basically opened up that mind for me to fertilize. So I'm like, their mind is open, so what are we going to do? And from 25 to 89, that's a lot of growth. Like, again, we started out with 25 kids just picking up trash. And the first year, they didn't think they were going to get paid. They're like, yo, are we getting paid? I mean, they said the city don't have any money. Are we getting paid? I mean,
I know.
I mean, if you don't get paid, you guys you're gonna beat me up. But and it started that way. But then we started understanding that behavior is so important. So we added the 7 habits as one of our foundations. The 7 habits of highly effective teens, the foundation for the kids, so that they can understand if you live by these 7 habits, you're going to be a very productive citizen, you know, in our society. So as we evolved, not only did we clean up, we had a lot of speakers coming in. Mr. Cornelius came down and spoke to the kids about, the good job that we're doing and to continue to do that. But we had a lot of speakers come and engage with the kids. The kids listened. I mean, their listening skills are heightened because Harrisburg University and Thaddeus Stevens, all these places have so many opportunities our kids have we don't even know about. And a lot of kids on the outside are kind of jealous, like, wow, why do city kids get these opportunities and we don't? And we just wanted to expose them. I said, I want you kids to learn how to run this city. I want you to be productive. I want you to not run away from the city. Everybody say, I'm getting out of Harrisburg. I don't like Harrisburg. I want you to like Harrisburg, respect it, and I want you to learn about all the different jobs so that you can be a highly productive citizen. And that's what you see. The pictures are 1,000 words. We had 89 kids. We went from, I taught them how to garden, how to grow food. You have some of my pickles, right? The kids learn how to garden, something like that, very simple, but it could be a stream of income. Everything we did was a source of income. We had them interview the different departments at a housing authority. That could be a form of income. You got to know who you're working for. We had the kids take a tour at Wildwood. You might be a tour guide one day, and they really enjoyed that. But the kids we had the mentors is the key. Our college mentors and our college interns and adult mentors make the program. We had 9 incredible leaders who had a team. We had 8 teams, and they managed those teams well. These kids went back to college. I'm sure they're sharing their stories. They want to come back next year. So the program is not only evolving into a really good thing, but it's becoming one of the best things in Harrisburg. And I said in my report here, Oprah Winfrey said she invested $40 million in an all-girls school over in Africa. And the reason she didn't do it here is because a lot of kids don't take education for granted. I see it every day. I teach it still high. But I said, you know what? I want to make sure that if anybody from the city or a housing authority, anybody come in and see what we're doing, they're going to say, okay, they're doing the right thing. I said, when you're out in the streets with those shirts on, people are always watching you. And we always said that. You're always being watched. If you do something wrong, they're going to call me. They're like, Watson, how'd you know about that? They're going to call me. And that's a program that we want to build, and we're going to continue building. And we could have had 100, this year because we had some more mentors. It's up to the mentors. Okay. The more mentors we get, the more kids. And now the kids are coming in expecting to do well. Even when, I don't know if it was you, one of the kids telling another kid trying to get in the program, hey, if you get in this program, you got to listen. You can't be getting smart anymore. You can't curse and all that kind of stuff. You got to be respectful. And that carries a lot of weight. So I'm very pleased about the program, and I feel grateful that you guys gave me an opportunity to go ahead and run the program. And as long as we can do it, we'll just keep building and building. And kids from everywhere, and still like, why can't we get in the program? It's for city kids in Harrisburg. So, but eventually, hopefully, we'll just go and expand everywhere. But again, thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. I thank you both, Mr. Manson, Mr. Watson, for the update on the Summer Youth Program. Mm-hmm. I am certainly delighted to hear the program was a success this year, and I look forward to working with you next year and trying to reach our goal of 100. I'm very impressed with your zero tolerance program policy. I wish we could incorporate that, in the school district, but one step at a time. But congratulations, a good job.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mr. Manson, do you have anything to say?
Not at this time.
Okay, Mr. Majors.
I just want to thank you, gentlemen, for doing this and continue to sell into our kids in the city. This is a great opportunity for them, and look to continue to see it grow. And you have our full support moving forward.
Thank you.
Ms. Davis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnson.
I just want to say, just from my quick experience of just speaking there and kind of seeing the different kids interact with each other, I think the biggest value that comes out of it is their bonding experience while doing the projects. I think as individuals, kids, want to do good, and they'll see things like, trash in their playgrounds, and they'll say things like, oh, somebody needs to clean this up. But it's through these programs that, they're able to kind of identify and say, like, we are the people supposed to be cleaning it up. And I think from there, and one thing I expressed to them was that domino effect of now you guys are being exposed to it, and rather than walking past it, like when you're with your friends and things of that nature, it's more or less, taking the initiative. And one thing when I was there, I was able to kind of watched when CRW came. So CRW was able to actually tell really good stories because a lot of people who currently work for CRW are from the city. So, you know, we had Malcolm Hicks, he was there, someone who I went to school with, who just told him, like, hey, you know, I didn't necessarily have a formal education. I got this job. I'm able to provide for my family. And he was able to kind of tell, you know, his story, which was, you know, phenomenal for kids to hear. Because at the end of the day, these kids are going to be the future leaders of our city and are going to be occupying these roles. So I think what you guys are doing phenomenal. And I think it should be a more of a call to action to, you know, other partners and businesses within inside the city to kind of support this initiative so we can surpass our goal of 100, because this is a phenomenal program. Because clearly, right in the beginning, there was 220 kids who applied for the program. So there was a lot of kids who weren't able to be exposed to it. But I think we have enough funding partners in the city to kind of answer that call to be able to make that contribution to make it happen and expand for a more exciting program next year. So thank you, guys.
Well said.
Mr. Allen?
Yeah, the only thing I'll say, it was actually great to see the kids all over town with T-shirts.
Green.
Right.
Because we
Fluorescent.
saw the impact around. And so I much echoing Councilman Johnson's point too. The more we can increase both the visibility of the program and the students that are involved, and just the impact that it has, I think it runs full circle. I think the example that they set for even their peers and being part of a program like that is a really good thing. But I was happy every morning driving to work. I saw them walking up 3rd Street going to heck, and then I saw them at the university where I work there too. So it was great to see.
Thank you.
Your mic's not on, Mr. Allen. Your mic's not on.
Oh, my thanks so much.
Okay. My bad. Okay. But
And also, we do have our application out for our youth council. So any of those kids that you feel like would want to be inside, we can give you more information on what that council
Okay.
composes of. But I think the deadline for that's October 19th. So if you guys still have maybe some of the numbers or emails of the kids who you think may be interested in that opportunity, I think will be you guys have a good group of kids who may want to take that call as well. So.
Okay.
Yeah, the kids are on, I don't know, one of the biggest programs we have is called On Track to Post-Secondary Education. And it's a self-study program where basically if you complete it throughout the school year, but our kids do it during the summer. And it prepares you for college. And by the time you become a senior, you already know what school you're going to, how it's going to be paid for. I mean, it's an incredible program and it's free. And our kids started it last year. We came on board with, it's called Individual Commons. And we had 3 kids complete it last year. This year we had like over 40 kids complete the program during the summer. And I do have access to all the kids because now I can monitor how many modules they do. So I'm gonna get that information out about the youth council because that's another avenue that we want to get our kids to pursue.
They send me their grades now. That's how intense they are about doing well.
that's wonderful.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Good initiative. Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Moving on to courtesy of the floor. Anyone from my right who would like to come to the mic, please do so now.
Lewis Butch, 612, Seneca. That is one of the best programs that I've seen throughout the center. They did a fantastic job. I've had several complaints regarding the water bills and people having real big problems with paying their water bill, and it's been estimated up and then averaged out and having close to like $400 water bills a month. I don't know what's up with that. And I think we should look into that because I had 4 calls today about them just having 72 hours to respond to their water bills, else they're going to get their water bill their water cut off. I don't know if Capital and Regional is doing what's going on, but it's been like it's been on an uptick in the last week. I don't know about it. I think City Council and the mayor should look at it and see what people are going through right now. Harrisburg High had their football game that they did. It broke records on scoring like 82 points, 85 points, and beating Chambersburg. That's a big issue. It was like a big high school record in the state of the largest scores ever. I think we need to look at our kids and see what they're actually doing. They're doing a lot. And I think they need to be commended, brought maybe in front of the city and looked at the issues. We have 2 state all-star players that are going to big games, playing in big national games that maybe we should bring them in and say, you're doing a good job and stuff like that. I'm gonna work on maybe working with city council to bring them in and really give them some credit where credit's due. I think we need to do some shout outs so people can go to these games and show support. I went to the Chambersburg game and everybody from Chambersburg was there and they got blew out, but none of their fans left. And we can't get people to come to our games, and we're the best in the world right now. And so I think maybe we need to give our kids a little bit more support when they're doing a good job than when they're doing bad, and we give them a lot of press and a lot of rap then. I think we need to, rearrange our energy and put it in the positive zone when there is a positive zone instead of working in negative when there's a negative. I know sometimes I talk and it's on deaf ears for some kind of reason, but it's some seriousness going on, and I want to for people to open their ears, open their eyes, and get their butts into action and do something about it. You're doing a fantastic job. I'm not pointing no fingers. I'm just saying everybody as a whole needs to work in sync to doing the right thing at the right time. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Butts. Anyone else to my right, please?
Good evening, council members. Linda M. Kamak, 1104 North 16th Street, Harrisburg. I come before you again regarding this proposed drug and alcohol rehab halfway house that sits beside me. On September the 12th, I was invited by Mr. Patton and Mr. Farrell from the Codes Department to attend a hearing regarding violations that this house had, and they gave them a certain amount of time to have them fixed. Nobody attended the hearing except Mr. Farrell and myself. On that day, when we left, Mr. Farrell said he was going back by the house. I went home. Mr. Farrell showed up later. He did see one of the people on the upstairs floor and asked them, who lives upstairs? And the guy said, well, it's 5 of us up here. So he said, well, who lives downstairs? The housing manager. So he saw me out front and he said, I'm giving them a week to close this down. Well, for some reason or another, the owner spoke with Mr. Farrell and said that they had a proposed business plan. Well, when you say proposed business plan, that tells me that then becomes commercial, not residential. So we are still waiting for this proposed business plan. In the interim, on Saturday morning at 8:42, I'm sorry, I had to call 911. There was a big argument, arguing, you know what I mean. Cussing, I'm sorry. F word this, F word that. I don't cuss. Anybody that knows me my whole life, I can get as mad as I want to be, but I do not use profanity. I didn't appreciate it. I'm a Christian. We don't have that going. You can hear a pin drop in that neighborhood. But these guys are arguing back and forth and cussing and carrying on. We don't want that. We don't need it in our neighborhood. And we're not going to have it in our neighborhood. I had to call the cops again the next morning, Sunday morning, while the church bells were tolling. They were out there in the backyard with an electric saw and a gun, hammer gun, building and doing something, proposing something. I called the cops. The cops came and said that, they had to stop. This is Sunday morning, and I work nights. I have to sleep. But this cussing woke me up. I didn't get home until midnight. And then to be awakened by this, we don't want it in our neighborhood. Please help me. I spoke to Mr. Farrell today, right before I came, and he said that he has not gotten a proposal from them. He's going to send something to Mr. Knight in Building and Housing to see if he heard anything. Why are we giving them an opportunity? That's what I want to know. Why? We don't want it. My neighbors, my senior citizens are afraid. They're afraid of these people. And you should see them. They come and park. They take up spaces. We don't have that many spaces as there is. But we don't want this. All these different kinds of guys. Ankle monitors on. You don't know who they are half the time. They come in and out all night long. Please help. Please help me. Please help the neighborhood. There's one up in the 900 block of North 16th Street that came in and is there. And 17th and Bow Street. So I'm trying to stop this. I've lived there for 59 years. And I've worked my whole life. And I'm near retirement. And I'm not going to sit in my house and listen to this and see this. The man that owns a house lives in Mechanicsburg, like I said before. Take it and put it next to his house in Mechanicsburg. There's no room for it here. Thank you so very kindly.
You're welcome, Ms. Kamak. Anyone else to my right?
Good evening, council members. My name is Laura Harding. I'm from the 2200 block of North 3rd Street. I am a disabled veteran, and I am here to talk to you about the problem with off-leash dogs. I am currently, and have been for the past 6 years, a member of a service dog training program that's currently run by one of your retired canine officers, Corporal John Salvaday. And I have a serious problem with my dog having been attacked recently by off-leash dogs. Now, I haven't been walking my dog in the city of Harrisburg, specifically around Italian Lake, William Penn High School, Riverfront Park. It's a haven for off-leash dogs. I've talked to many members of the community who have had their dogs attacked by off-leash dogs, and nothing seems to be done about it. So I was taking my dog out of the city of Harrisburg, well, sort of out of the city, to the state hospital grounds. It's partly in Susquehanna Township, partly in the city. And my dog was recently attacked by 2 off-leash dogs there. So I don't know if you know this, but I have 2 service dogs. One is retired and one is in training. The one that's in training is the one that was attacked. Now, I don't know if you know, you should know, having many canines in your department, the cost of training, what goes into training, the many hours of training, that can ruin a service dog. My service dog, the one that's retired, saved my life. It was a life-saving moment for me to get a service dog. Losing a potential service dog is life-altering. It's life-altering. You have to start all over again if the dog doesn't recover. I mean, there's disabled people in this community, elderly people, children that are potential victims of an attack, but like a service dog or even a pet dog, I mean, that can destroy a dog and it can never be around another dog ever again. I implore you to take this matter seriously. I did send an email to Mr. Johnson on September 27th regarding this incident, and I did not receive a response. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. You wanna respond?
Couple things. I guess I can talk to you more if you're able to stay up to the end of the meeting. One of the things I'm not sure if you were able to contact was one of our 2 our dog enforcement, our animal enforcement officers with the police department. Because a lot of times it's an issue, it's a bigger issue, especially in the city in comparison to a lot of the surrounding areas, and something that we kind of increased our enforcement. We actually have a grant for that now to add a second enforcement officer for those incidents. So I'm not sure if there has been any communications with that. And usually, when those incidents happen, the best thing we can do is communicate it to the animal enforcement officer to give them the location so they can kind of see if they can, get the dog.
It's well known from the people that I've talked to that Italian Lake, William Penn High School is a major problem. I've seen dogs there off leash. A neighbor reported that their cat was attacked by an off leash dog. I saw 4 off leash dogs running down my street in my block, off leash pit bulls running down the street. Now, when my dog was attacked by the Capitol Police have jurisdiction at the state hospital, they stated that they issued tickets in the summer. They issued multiple tickets during the summer, but I'm not hearing that that's happening in the city of Harrisburg, and I would like to know why. I would like to know how many tickets have been issued. Are the police or the dog enforcement or animal enforcement just giving out warnings because they see it's a lab and they think it's friendly? That's not always true. I mean, you can't just prejudge a breed. I know more Labrador retrievers that have bitten people than many other breeds. So I just don't think that it's being taken seriously because it's an ongoing issue. I know somebody that had her two dogs attacked by a Rottweiler on City Island. You know, it's happening everywhere and it's well known. So what kind of enforcement is going on? Are they just giving out warnings? Are citations actually being issued? Is it actually being investigated? Because this has been going on for years from what I'm told.
Yeah, it has.
Yes, I'm sure the mayor's also taking notes, so you can follow back up with the enforcement officer. I'll follow up with it as well. But like I said, within, the city's actually receiving, I'm not sure if it's a Dauphin County grant or it's another grant to actually hire another animal enforcement officer just because of this incident, because this is something that's been talked about for years. So as far as the enforcement procedures with that, like I said, we have to pull those stats to kind of see where we're at with that and how effective that second animal enforcement officer is at taking care of it. I'm sure we probably need 2 more, just with the amount of not only unleashed dogs, but just general loose dogs that are inside the city that not only attack dogs, but it could be, kids as well. So, I'll follow up into it, seeing where we're at with it. I'm sure the mayor is taking notes. He'll follow up into it as well. But I think we all know it's a problem that more needs to be done.
Thank you.
Can I just add real quick? We had this same conversation on council 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
And so I think, just putting a plug in there, I'd wait till the end to ask, but while it's fresh in my mind, can we get a report about whether it be citations issued, warning issued, or anything from animal control on these types of situations?
I can certainly ask the police, and as I'm listening, it occurs to me that maybe our park rangers could do more to report unleashed dogs in the parks. It sounds like a lot of these incidents are happening in our parks. So I will also communicate to them, and but yes, I'll request a report back to council.
Or perhaps even, I don't know if they're tracking this by way, the number of people making reports about these incidents, because I think one of the challenges and frustrations within the community is if they feel like they're reporting, but not hearing any action as a result of it. So I think that's also part of it too. So maybe if we just get some information.
Since this was last addressed by council, we do now have 2 dog enforcement officers as opposed to 1, and we now have 2 park rangers, hoping to propose another one in the upcoming budget. So we had no park rangers when we took office, so we're slowly building capacity. But yes, it would be helpful to get a report on just how much activity there is in terms of complaints and citations. I know some of that is being tracked because the dog officer is funded through a grant, so we will get back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else to my right like to come to the mic in the middle?
Hi, I'm Dave Schumann from 210 Her. Crime Watch. This was a couple of months ago. I had shared that I had bought some motion sensor lights and I was putting them in the alleys and this. Well, as they all ended up, the batteries were running out. So I'm grateful that I didn't spread them throughout Midtown because I returned them. Okay. But one thing I really need to share this evening is that back on the 13th of last month, my wife and I went to Indianapolis and we came home on the 15th. And what had happened was some adolescents went over my fence and took 2 bicycles. They threw them over, they left one there, and then they came back the next day and they got the other one, along with a pair of rollerblades and just some miscellaneous stuff. Like I say, this was back on the 13th and 14th of last month. What's taken place is there's a bunch of kids on bikes right now. There's about 4 or 5 of them, and they're in the middle age of 15, 13, 9, okay, from what we've seen. They've been going into the back door next door This going through some construction. I heard a noise. I put the flashlight. I looked. There was a door that was just moved. There was nothing taken from it. Okay? That was that. Then they were back the next night. Okay? I heard them. So I put the light on. Lo and behold, they took off. What had taken place is a neighbor at 222 on Forester, she had emailed, and this is for the next door. Okay? This is all being now shared to everyone in the neighborhood. That these adolescents had gone through and they broke some of the pots and this and that, and this was weeks ago. I went and had a meeting with them. 2 nights ago, they were in the back door of that, in the back of that lot, in the next door, and I saw them sticking their heads up over the fence. My wife saw them, and they said, "Look up." They ran out. They hopped on their bikes. I went on out, and along with my wife, and I'm eyeballing them. They're right down there on Union and Penn, and that's the area where there's been a lot of damage going on. Okay? I'm just sort of waiting, and what happened was they were coming toward me, and they saw me, and then they went the other way. Now, as of today, well, let me say this back. 1 day ago, there was a report on 222 again on there on Union and Penn that they went over the fence, they put the bench over, they broke a bunch of pots, okay? And then as of today, there are a dozen individuals through next door, throughout the whole community of Harrisburg, that these kids are throwing bricks, they're throwing stones, they're stealing, they're ramping, they're just vandalizing, okay? Some of those kids have been seen, the parents have been confronted with, and what the problem is, there's no supervision, okay? So what's taking place right now is it's just gotten out of hand. And what got me back a long time ago, too, was back in 1995, we had a different program with Crime Watch. Okay, and where I'm at right now, I'm going to have to be one of the ones that we need to start to have some meetings in Midtown. You know, when you would have your little captains on your blocks and hand out the flyers. And these would be things where it would be reports that could go to the police, where it would be drug dealing and or thievery and or whatever it might be, to fill it out, to be able to give some help with the police department along with us within the community to try to restrain this, okay? Next week, I will be sharing something else that I've been trying to create and to have to happen is because weeds be gone in Harrisburg. So, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, sir. Anyone else in the middle?
Okay, I'll make it very quick. My name is Olivia Peck. I live at 403 Hale Avenue. This past Sunday, someone fired a shot in front of my house. I even saw the spark. I didn't call the police because they jumped in a car and they left. But my real concern was that it was dark at that point, and it was too dark. There's not enough lighting on our street, particularly on my side, which is the odd side of the street, from Swatara down to Berry Hill. There used to be lights on some of the poles, but they removed those lights. So it's not like I can report a light is out. It's just not there. So a lot of the streets are very dark. I perhaps could have even identified whether it was a man, woman, child who shot the gun, but it was so dark out there that I couldn't see it. So my complaint is we really need more lighting. I think we'd surely be interested in working, you know, with someone in terms of Crime Watch to do a better job of monitoring our area, but I wanted to find out whether or not there's any plans to maybe even use solar panels anywhere at any given point in time, which perhaps would save the money and still get the lighting that we need, or if there's any plan to get additional lighting. A lot of the streets in Harrisburg are very dark, and with the big trees, it's almost impossible to see who's there and what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Majors.
Well, we actually have a resolution to upgrade some of the lights. We've been making the switch over to LEDs. And, being a neighbor not too far from you, I do recognize that Hale Avenue is pretty dark. Some of it has to do with some of the tree canopy that's there, but I'll make sure I talk with our city engineer and we have someone come out and take a look on Hale. And if we need to replace lights, we'll do so and see which light poles that you're referring to, and we'll take some photos and see. I'll talk with the city engineer about taking care of those as well.
Thank you. Anyone else in the middle? Anyone to my left? Thank you. Moving on. Approval of minutes. Approve of the legislative session minutes of September 12, 2017. Council members, are there any omissions, deletions, corrections? Hearing none, minutes will stand as such. Moving on, report to committee. Report from Chair Johnson on the work session of October the 3rd, 2017. Mr. Johnson, are you ready with your report?
Yes.
Thank you.
So on October 3rd, 2017, the Public Safety Committee met to discuss one resolution, which was Resolution 88, which had to do with the creation of the task force to talk about three issues. One, community policing; second, policing strategies and policies; and third was to review the possible creation of a civilian review board. Council members discussed different aspects of the bill about possibly adding more members to the task force, how long the task force would be, the duties of the actual members of the task force, the final recommendations that council would possibly look for to give the task force more objectives and goals. And I'm basically going to take these different recommendations from my council members to come with the amended resolution to be reviewed by the Law Bureau to be reintroduced again October 24th with the recommendations from my fellow council members. So that was the discussion behind Resolution 88. We also had an extensive conversation in general about community policing. We had members here from our command staff just talking about different strategies that they were working on. One of the strategies that they were discussing was the cadet program. They was also discussing just the different mechanisms through Crime Blotter and Crime Watch of how they're looking to kind of further evolve that. We also took public comment from members in the community who were concerned about growing crimes in their areas. So basically, we're looking to continue these conversations, possibly looking at having these conversations outside of City Hall. So we're making sure that, this is not just a one-sided conversation, but it's more of a dialogue between the police and the community to kind of, really, get some crime resolution in some of our neighborhoods. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Moving on to report from Chair Batson on the work session of October the 3rd, 2017. Mr. Matson, are you ready with your report?
Yep.
Thank you.
The Economic Development Committee, we had a discussion on Resolution 90, resolution approving the second amendment to the lease licensing operating agreement between the City of Harrisburg and the National Civil War Museum, modifying provisions to provide for the sale and purchase of the city-owned historical collection. The Civil War Museum folks gave a presentation. After the presentation, we asked questions, particularly we went over the authenticity of the collection, and we were assured that the collection was authentic and that they have gone through the process of double-checking to make sure that everything is real. And we discussed the purchase of an appraisal of the artifacts. Still a discussion, or wasn't clear understanding of who would pay for that if we did choose to opt to do an appraisal. And then we asked for information, in particular, that they come back with a template for a fundraising strategy, statistics on National Museum averages for donations and fundraising, and also a list of the CWM's donations over the Civil War Museum's donations over the last 5 years. And then we also wanted to know how access monies will be distributed if they were to surpass their fundraising.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Matson. Moving on to ordinance of first reading, we have none this evening. And then moving on to ordinance for amendment, we have none as well. Moving on for ordinance for final passage, Bill 12 of 2017. Mr. Petrosky, please read that into record.
Yeah, Bill 12 of 2017 was moved by Mr. Johnson, seconded by Ms. Williams. It's an ordinance amending the City of Harrisburg's traffic control map pursuant to Chapter 3-109 of the codified ordinances by changing the flow of traffic of Goodwill Drive between Cameron Street and North 12th Street from a two-way street to a one-way street.
Any questions or comments on Bill 12, council members? Hearing none, please call the vote.
Mr. Allett?
Yes.
Ms. Daniels?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes,
Bill 12 passes.
thank you. Moving on to resolutions. Resolution 63, 2017.
Resolution 63 of 2017 was moved by Ms. Williams, seconded by Mr. Allett. It's a resolution approving a lease agreement with Eastern University for use of a portion of the basement of the Martin Luther King Jr. building for classrooms and administrative offices to support its course offerings and degree programs in Harrisburg.
Council members, would you like me to suspend the rules
All right, so move.
for conversation with Mr. Bunny?
Yeah, so,
Or do we vote? What questions and comments?
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules.
Okay, motion to suspend the rules. Mr. Johnson, may I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. This time, Mr. Bunny, would you come forth, please, to give us an explanation?
Actually, I spoke to Mr. Bunning, and he asked me to present
Okay,
on behalf
all
of...
right, thank you, I'm
Eastern.
sorry, sir.
He is
Sure.
here.
I need, it's first properly moved and second. Call the vote, please, before you do that, for the suspension of the rules.
Okay. Mr. Allett?
Yes.
Ms. Daniels?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson? Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Okay, Mayor.
Yes, thank you. I'm hopeful that we won't miss this opportunity tonight to bring Eastern into downtown Harrisburg. I think it's a great opportunity for the city. It will bring jobs to the city, for sure. It'll also bring educational opportunities, especially, I think, in the fields of medicine, nursing, and education. It's very much needed. It will help create a critical mass of educational institutions in the downtown, along with Temple and Messiah and HU. The amount of public support for this project is really impressive. We've received nothing but positive comments from a variety of institutions and from the public. When we had the committee presentation, council asked some very good questions, and we did get responses from Eastern in writing. Just for the benefit of the public, they should know that from a parking standpoint, which is one of the questions, they've looked into a sort of discounted evening rate in the garages for students, as well as a rate in the garages for faculty. I should note that that would be revenue that would also bring additional parking taxes into the city if those folks chose to do that. There was some confusion, I think, last time about the lease rate, and they made it clear in their responses that just to remember that it's really only about 3,000 square feet of space which is dedicated just to Eastern. The rest of the space that's being renovated in the basement is actually for the use of the city of Harrisburg with the new IT offices, the break room, et cetera. That worked out to a lease rate of over $15 a square foot, which is actually above average. They did respond that they were pleased to offer the 25% discount for city residents, but they couldn't go beyond that, although that was asked of city council. They provided information regarding Wilson Construction, which has a good history with overseeing WB&B projects in Harrisburg, as well as some information about the number of jobs that would be part of both the construction phase and the eventual university. There's some, still seems to be some debate over the non-discrimination ordinance, and I wanted to address that for a minute. They've made it very clear that they support and believe in the city's non-discrimination ordinance, and that, especially with regard to students, no one will be discriminated against who attends Eastern University or is taking classes. With regard to faculty, they also have made it clear, though, that they are a Christian university, and they have a statement of faith for their university as a whole. And they're unwilling to sort of change that. I'd just like to say, for one, I respect that. As a private institution, I think, and essentially as a Christian college, they should be able to hire faculty that reflect that as a qualification, just like other institutions would look for other types of qualifications. But that does not mean that they're not committed to abiding by the city's non-discrimination ordinance. In fact, they issued a strong statement of support for that. And I would call council's attention to the other resolutions that you'll see in this upcoming agenda. One of the things that we've worked together on, which I think is really important, is going to be the reestablishment of the Harrisburg Human Relations Commission, a long time coming. But we've worked well together to jointly appoint a new board. We've brought in a talented new social equity director who can be the liaison to that board. So I think we are working together to boldly state that we not only won't tolerate discrimination of any kind, including discrimination against gender expression, but we are going to provide a mechanism whereby people can be heard. And we're going to support that as a city. So I look at that, and I also look at all that Eastern has to offer. And I see the balance as being extremely, extremely positive. I would say if we miss this opportunity, it won't come again, and we'll lose an opportunity to bring hundreds of thousands of dollars in necessary renovations into the city. Now, I have prepared the capital budget, assuming for your review, and we're going to be presenting that, assuming that we were going to move forward with the Eastern lease. If we weren't to do that, we'd still have to fund a new EOC, we'd have to fund security upgrades, we'd have to fund IT renovations, all of which are much needed. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars that we are going to have to fund, and it would take away from investment in parks, playgrounds, streets, roads, you name it. I mean, it's real money. It's significant money. So that $600,000 investment that Eastern's offering at that time, to my way of thinking, is not only generous, but it also is allowing us to take the resources that we have and focus them in parks, roads, playgrounds, public safety, and you'll see that in the proposal. So there would be a cost because certain things which they're addressing are things that the city would have to address otherwise, and that would be hundreds of thousands of dollars of renovations. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding either the responses that Eastern gave or just general questions about the lease. And Kevin Baum is here as well, if there were still questions about the square footage or the lease rate, so that people could understand.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Abbott.
I don't have any questions, but just kind of point of clarifications. One of the reasons I've been uncomfortable with this type of situation is the mix of a religious-based institution coming into City Hall. And so that's something that I've been toying with. And while I respect the fact that they don't want to discriminate against the students, the truth remains that the university would not hire somebody like me. And so as a result of that, I've really kind of struggled with my support of something like that coming into City Hall. I recognize that religious-based institutions can do what they will, and that is up to them, but they're asking to come into our City Hall, which is a building for the people. And so I've just really kind of been morally conflicted over it. Do I see the financial benefit to the city? Absolutely. But I've worked too hard in my life for advocacy to make sure that people like me are not discriminated against. So as such, I remain deeply uncomfortable with this situation.
I would just say, from my perspective, and I think that's very, very valid, I think engaging the university and forging a partnership with them over the course of future years in a lease might be more effective than simply turning them away and ending the conversation and dialogue.
But you're asking them to come into city property. I am one of many, and you mentioned having lots of support for this from the community. You know, you're glossing over the fact that I've received lots of things contrary to that, and people are very concerned about that. It's not just me. You know, I'm one voice, and you know, I thought there's been so many discussions in my lifetime about advocacy and people talk about the equality movement in general. And, you know, I've always advocated as much as I can for this community, but really it's about equity. You know, I advocated for equality enough that I ran for office to get a seat on this table and around this board. And as such, you know, I have a voice to represent not just myself, but the community that I live in. And I think that that's something that, you know, probably for the first time since I sat on this body that I've had to exercise that point of view. You're right, we should engage in every institution to promote and to learn, quite honestly, that being gay or not doesn't have to be a religious exception. There's plenty of religious institutions that have no problems with that. But here I sit with a choice that I have to make to say yes or no to allow an institution onto campus, into this city hall, which is, again, a building of the people. And I remain deeply conflicted about it. That's all
I
I'd
respect
say.
that completely. I will just say I did not personally, the mayor's office did not receive any negative or written concerns about Eastern. And on the contrary, we received many different letters of support from organizations from throughout the city and from individuals.
Mr. Johnson?
I guess just piggybacking on what you just said, are you saying you received more letters than what we received?
We may have received more letters than you've received, but I know we forwarded on a variety
Yeah, I mean,
of letters.
there was five, I think it was 5 or 6 different letters from different like executive directors who run organizations inside the city. But I'm not going to say all of them, but majority of them don't live inside the city. So not to discredit any of their value that they bring to the city, but I think it kind of weighs into, I don't want to give a misconception to say that, there's a whole hard public support for it. I think it brings about, just through my different interactions and talking to different people, it brings about different conversations about it. Some people are a little bit uncomfortable from the religious aspect of, some people will quote different things that may not apply. We have our legal opinion that says that, our law bureau said there's really, not against the law to allow such a facility, but there's different aspects of how people feel about it. I mean, it's a crazy thing, kind of even how it even ties into the human relations, board. What if, someone from the city, who happens to be a part of the LGBT community applies for a job and didn't get the job and felt like they were discriminated against and takes that to our human relations board. I mean, I know there's different caveats within the law in between, the religious protection of the institution and, and their rights and, their rights as, being a part of our, non-discrimination ordinance. But, it's like we are creating an atmosphere where that can possibly happen and we have to possibly judge out. I think it's a great proposal. I think it's a very unique proposal. I think it will be beneficial to the downtown areas. I think it'll do not just a lot, just for downtown area, but just for overall morale inside the building to see something nice getting done. Just being a former employee, but I think we also have to look from the aspect is that responsibility of saying, are we providing an environment that's free from all types of discrimination? And just, to Ben's point, there is that vagueness to it. And I think, within the law, that vagueness has not been defined, from the federal level all the way down to here right now. So I think, that's something, that's, not only sitting with me, but I'm sure a lot of other people as well. I know it's good to be cutting edge, but I think we're kind of in some muddy waters when it comes to this, and that's just my statement on it. I really don't have any questions.
Anyone else? Anything? Mr. Majors?
Yeah, I don't want to belabor the point. I think, the comments of Councilman Allett and Councilman Johnson pretty much hit on a lot of the same concerns that I have. And to the point that you guys have made previously, we, I said, we're on the cutting edge when it comes to this. And I said, I just took a quick look again at the 5 letters of support that we did receive and who they were from. And I appreciate the letters of support and would definitely like to hear more from community residents, because as we've talked about this, I think the issue has much to do with that religious institution coming and setting up shop within City Hall. So, we respect everyone's right to practice, any religion and as they wish, but when you're sort of marrying it with City Hall, that's where I think some of the consternation may sit with some folks and me as well. But you mentioned about the lease space. So 3,000 square feet is dedicated space. How much additional space, I guess, is going to be mixed use? Because they have access to some of the space as well. It's not just.
You can read that if you want.
The actual square footage, I believe the mayor said was 3,000. The actual square footage is 2632. Okay, and that includes the classrooms, the 3 classrooms that are proposed by Eastern. They will not be using the hallways, and of course the restrooms are accessible. They'll use the hallways just to get in the class. We will also benefit. We'll be using the hallways.
How many square feet is it?
I'm just asking how many square feet total. We said 3,000.
The actual school is 2,632.
How many square feet are they doing renovations on? Just 2,300, 2,630. I'm asking how much work are they doing in terms of square footage, regardless of if the city's benefited from it or not.
Mm-hmm. In terms of the entire square footage of the basement that is being renovated, the portion, which includes the IT offices, do you know approximately what we're looking at?
Approximately 5,000 square feet.
Okay. And so the numbers that you gave us are solely based on, you said they'll be using 3,000.
Yes.
And we said 3,000 feet times, 3,000 square feet times $15 a square foot gets us around 450,000.
Times 10, yeah.
Times 10,
Times 10, yeah.
right. So.
And they were offering to put in 600,000.
Right. So.
To the space.
So if we take but the city's receiving some benefits. I guess that's why we're only saying the city's receiving a benefit as well. On top of, we're receiving a benefit for 5,000 square feet. It's being.
Correct,
yes.
I think that, yes, that's a very important point. And having just been down in the basement recently, I know the state of our current IT offices. They're not only have not been renovated, they're really substandard working conditions. The proposal called to renovate hundreds of square feet of space that was currently used for storage and for sort of maintenance areas in the building, to turn that into sort of high-grade office space for the IT department. And that's in addition to the other benefits that the city would see with the new emergency operation center, which would be high-tech and up to code. Also, we also should mention the security upgrades to the elevators and the cameras and the common spaces as well. That's where you get up to that total number of, I guess, about 5,000 square feet. The only point really was that for the actual square footage, the imprint that is just devoted to Eastern, that's which is actually less than 3,000 square feet. They're paying an above market rate for that. The rest of the renovation contribution is really something that benefits the city as a whole, and I would say the taxpayers and our residents. And regarding the public comment, I would just say, I understand it's a contentious issue. I don't doubt that, but I would say that there hasn't been an outpouring of people to come to speak out against this. And to the extent that it was debated and discussed on social media, I know I chimed in on a strain that Councilman Johnson started and others. The response actually has been positive. I have, unlike other issues in which we get an awful lot of response, community policing, the task force, other things, there really has been, I think, to the extent that I've gotten feedback, I'm just saying, to the extent that I've received feedback from the public, it has been positive. And I think that's because of the educational nature, the need. I mean, these graduate degrees, teaching, nursing, there's a need for this. There's a significant discount being offered to city residents, and it's relocating jobs and activity from the suburbs into the city, all things that we want to see. I understand it's a balance, and we have to balance that against everything, but I think by and large the public has appreciated that for this particular moment in time that we're in.
Okay. So again, in terms of jobs, so how many can you, I guess, elaborate on how many jobs are going to be created through this?
Is it 6?
This is 6? I
There
believe-
were two types of jobs. There were the construction jobs for
right.
the renovation project, which Wilson would be managing, and then there would be the relocation of the faculty jobs. And if that was 6 or so for the faculty and staff, Wallace, can you help with that? Then that is correct.
Okay. So new jobs is great. New jobs, I guess, they'll be working in the city. They'll be, paying taxes to the city. Do we have any guarantee on those new jobs being available to city residents? Or are city residents going to be able to benefit from these jobs, or these jobs that we're just going to say, hey, this is going to create 12 jobs, but are they city residents that are going to have an opportunity to be employed, or will they be coming from outside the city?
Well, again, I think it depends on, there are two types of jobs. There are the construction jobs, which Wilson would be managing, and I feel that we would be able to influence that and direct local contractors to that opportunity. I realize that's just a short-term job in terms of the renovation. In terms of the longer-term faculty and staff jobs, that would be something that, would be hired by Eastern University as a whole, and I'm sure city residents could apply for those jobs, but there wouldn't be any guarantees that those jobs would be held by city residents. They would, of course, become essentially de facto city workers, and they would get to know and be better connected to the city and the community, and that over time could lead to an engagement of the university as a whole and maybe additional investments. If you look at how other universities have grown in the city, whether it's Temple or HU, it's been exponential and exciting, because this is the place where people want to go to school. They want to be part of a happening, energized city where they maybe don't have to have a car, where they can live and walk to school and get these additional career opportunities. So I know that was part of the desire of Eastern in the first place, to have much more of a connection with Harrisburg than they get in a suburban park.
Okay. And then I guess just 2 other quick questions. Is there a time sensitivity on this resolution?
There is, in the sense that their lease is up. I think they've testified to that. They need to make a decision about where they're going to be relocating. We did spend over a year plus doing due diligence on this, and they've been very patient. I think it's their position that they would like a resolution, because if they have to begin looking somewhere else, that's something they really need to know and plan for. I hope it won't come to that, but yes, there is a time-sensitive nature to this, because they need to make their plans for their future home.
Okay, and then I guess one last question just for me is, so you mentioned that our current facility, I guess we're having current employees in substandard conditions. So if this opportunity did not avail itself, how quickly were we looking to look at upgrades to our IT?
So we would have to we'd have to put that in our 3-year capital improvement plan, which means certain things are going to have to come out of our 3-year capital improvement plan. And I can just tell you, we only have so within the next 3 years, and that's what we're planning for, a 3-year capital improvement plan to address the city as a whole. But that includes, fire department apparatus and radios for the police and, all sorts of upgrades to parks and playgrounds and you name it. So we have many more needs than we have resources. So my position is wherever we can find resources, good to apply those so that we can take the limited fund balance that we have and have that conversation with you about what to prioritize. If we weren't to go forward with this, we'd have to put those in because you're right, we can't have workers working in substandard conditions. One of the reasons we moved council up into the new office space was because we didn't feel it was appropriate space for people to be working in, and we made that commitment to council. I'd have to make that commitment to the employees of IT as well, and there's no more space to move them up, so we'd have to renovate that space, and that's gonna come at a serious cost, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Our emergency operations center is also not up to acceptable standards. Were we to have a true flood or an emergency, we'd be in trouble, and we need to upgrade that technology. We don't have security on our elevators. I mean, there's a lot of things that this proposal was offering to address that we thought would be helpful to the city's overall plans. But if we would have to do it if Eastern were not here, and that's going to be expensive. I'm just warning council about that, and it will mean less money for other much-needed community things.
Okay. And there's one last thing, and I think, Mr. Grover, you mentioned this before, and so this is we haven't been able to find any other place in that there's this sort of relationship between a religious institution and a government in terms of being able to essentially permanently leasing space or a 10-year lease of a space.
So there's lots of examples of religiously affiliated institutions in public facilities.
Right.
But we could not find one that lined up with this particular type of arrangement. So there are religious organizations that have long-term recurring rentals at high school auditoriums. There are religious institutions physically on the grounds of federal military installations. And there are a lot of places, in terms of creating accommodations, have made square footage available for religious exercises, particularly for a place to pray for various religious groups, whether it's a non-denominational chapel or whether it's something similar to that are in religious buildings. But we have not found this particular arrangement. And so it is, I think, from our view, cutting edge. You know, we've been at this a long time.
Right.
So.
And then for educational institutions, was it similar? Are there, different educational institutions that have these kind of relationships, regardless of even if it's not religiously affiliated, outside of assuming, with the state, they own the state's system of higher education. I'm talking about a private institution, if it's a private college or a private institution partnering with government.
The only ones we found with universities are state-related facilities where you have a campus that's a mixed set of universities.
Like the Dixon Center.
Right, the Dixon Center.
Right, but the state owns the system, and they're using state property.
They are, but they will allow other institutions in there.
St. Francis is in there, right?
Right.
Okay.
So I mean, they're there. They're just not part of the state system of higher education, but they're allowed to use the facility, even though they're a religious institution.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
If I could just say one last thing. I think we are in a unique situation here in Harrisburg. We had a financial crisis to the extent that over time, and certainly over the past several decades, money was not put into basic infrastructure needs of the city. It's gotten so bad that the public, and I guess this is my point, this is going to come again, because the public safety building has deteriorated to the point that it really is no longer habitable, and it is not viable to go in and replace that roof and those systems at costs of many millions of dollars for the system. We're going to have to look at leasing that building as well. And so that is sort of the cost of many decades of neglected infrastructure. And it's not just in our own buildings in City Hall. We see that in our streets and roads and subterranean infrastructure. So the fact that we're at the forefront or that we're cutting edge, yes, I agree, but that is the reality of the situation that we found ourselves in, and I don't think we should refuse opportunities that come to us to help us address that simply because they're novel or new. And I'm not suggesting that you would do that, but that's the balance. Part of the reason that we're looking at these innovative ideas is because of the situation that we inherited and because of the millions of dollars of costs that we have. So with regard to the public safety building, police are going to have to vacate that building. We don't have the resources to do it, even with our fund balance. We don't have the ability to go out and really borrow for that. The only thing that's going to work for that building down the line, this is part of the sort of 5-year plan, is going to be some sort of a public-private partnership again. And so this is the start for this building. This is sort of the final piece of this building, which we are committed to upgrading, that we're already spending millions of dollars on for the roof and the skylight and everything else. But that building is coming next, and it's going to be an issue.
I'll be interested to see, this is what I'm really interested, because that just really kind of came to my mind, is do we have any information on the Dixon Center and the state schools' relationship and agreement with St. Francis?
We do not have the agreement.
But it's still, you see what I'm saying? It's still like that same type of, symbiotic relationship. It's kind of a little bit more of a, I mean, it's the closest thing that's local that kind of fits this puzzle. I forgot that St. Francis was actually over there.
And I believe Messiah has actually a piece of their campus on one of
Mm-hmm.
The state doesn't have statewide non-discrimination.
That's what you said.
The state doesn't have statewide non-discrimination.
That's true. The state, there's some different interpretations out there, but our act goes further than
In the state's act.
Relations Act.
So moved.
Second.
Since there's no other questions or comments, please call the vote.
All right, calling the vote for Resolution 63. Mr. Allett?
No.
Ms. Daniels?
I just wanted to make the record clear why I'm voting the way I am. One, a city employee asked a religious institution to consider having space in the city. That was followed up with city employees making public space exclusively available to religious institutions. So I'm voting no, not because it is a religious institution, but we cannot give a preference to any entity based on religious affiliation or lack thereof. So no on this.
So it's a no. Mr. Johnson?
I heard my name. Just give me a second. Oh. No.
Mr. Mattson?
No.
Mr. Majors?
Yeah. Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Resolution 63 fails.
Moving on to Resolution 87.
Resolution 87 of 2017 was moved by Ms. Hodges, seconded by Ms. Williams. It's a resolution authorizing the City of Harrisburg to submit a grant application for a Pennsylvania Recreation and Park Society Incorporated Recreation and Parks Technical Assistance Program grant, supported by a grant from the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources for the Harrisburg Parks Conservancy Project.
And yes, before we vote on this, council members, I just want to give you an update. Ms. Hodges, who is the Parks and Recreation Committee Chair, was not here, so I did chair that particular resolution for her. And the purpose of this grant is to educate city officials on keeping our park system and playgrounds from further deterioration, and to establish a conservancy. And the conservancy will be organized as a nonprofit organization, and it will enable the city to solicit funds and donations from businesses. Now, the amount of this grant is $2,500. And this is certainly a good opportunity for the city to receive this funding, because they will pay for a series of speakers to come educate city employees on keeping our parks and recreation and playgrounds system in better condition. So I ask everyone please to vote in affirmative for this grant of $2,500. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, please call the vote.
Mr. Allett?
Yes.
Ms. Daniels?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes,
Resolution 87 passes.
thank you. Moving on to Resolution 91.
Resolution 91 of 2017 was moved by Ms. Williams, second by Mr. Mattson. It's a resolution confirming the appointment of Ms. Christian Yelody to serve on the reinstated Harrisburg Human Relations Commission for a one-year term.
That will be placed in the Administration Committee. Moving on to Resolution 92.
Resolution 92 of 2017 was moved by Ms. Williams, second by Mr. Mattson. It's a resolution confirming the appointment of Ms. Kia Hansard to serve on the reinstated Harrisburg Human Relations Commission for a three-year term.
That will be placed in Administration Committee. Moving on to Resolution 93.
Resolution 93 of 2017 was moved by Ms. Williams, seconded by Mr. Mattson. It's a resolution reappointing Mr. William Shambach to continue serving on the Audit Committee for the City of Harrisburg.
Any questions or comments on the reappointment of Mr. Shambach? Hearing none, please call the vote.
Mr. Allett?
Yes.
Ms. Daniels? Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes,
Resolution 93 passes.
thank you. Moving on to Resolution 94.
Resolution 94 of 2017 was moved by Ms. Williams, seconded by Mr. Mattson. It's a resolution confirming the appointment of Mr. Russell A. Boggs to serve on the reinstated Harrisburg Human Relations Commission for a three-year term.
That will be placed in the Administration Committee. Moving on to Resolution 95.
Resolution 95 of 2017 was moved by Ms. Williams, seconded by Mr. Mattson. It's a resolution confirming the reappointment of Mr. Theo Brady to serve on the reinstated Harrisburg Human Relations Commission for a one-year term.
And that is a resolution confirming the appointment, not reappointing. That would be placed in the Administration Committee. Moving on to Resolution 96.
Resolution 96 of 2017 was moved by Ms. Williams, seconded by Mr. Mattson. It's a resolution confirming the appointment of Ms. Carolyn I. Thomas to serve on the reinstated Harrisburg Human Relations Commission for a two-year term.
That would be placed in Administration Committee as well. Moving on to Resolution 97.
Resolution 97 of 2017 was moved by Ms. Williams, seconded by Mr. Mattson. It's a resolution confirming the appointment of Ms. Gretchen M. Little to serve on the reinstated Harrisburg Human Relations Commission for a one-year term.
That would be placed in the Administration Committee. Moving on to Resolution 98.
Resolution 98 of 2017 was moved by Ms. Williams, seconded by Mr. Mattson. It's a resolution confirming the appointment of Ms. Valerie Kerlock to serve on the reinstated Harrisburg Human Relations Commission for a two-year term.
That will be placed in the Administration Committee. Resolution 99.
Resolution 99, 2017 was moved by Ms. Williams, seconded by Mr. Mattson. It's a resolution confirming the appointment of Mr. Joshua J. Grubbs to serve on the reinstated Harrisburg Human Relations Commission for a three-year term.
That will be placed in the Administration Committee too. Moving on to Resolution 100.
Resolution 100 of 2017 was moved by Ms. Williams, seconded by Mr. Mattson. It's a resolution appointing Mr. Ryan M. Osborne to serve on the Audit Committee for the City of Harrisburg.
That will be placed in the Administration Committee. Moving on to Resolution 101.
Resolution 101 of 2017 was moved by Ms. Williams, seconded by Mr. Mattson. It's a resolution confirming the appointment of Ms. Amanda Carter to serve on the reinstated Harrisburg Human Relations Commission for a two-year term.
That will be placed in the Administration Committee as well. Moving on to Resolution 102.
Resolution 102 of 2017 was moved by Mr. Majors, seconded by Mr. Mattson. It's a resolution authorizing the City of Harrisburg to negotiate and enter into a professional services contract with Mr. George L. Schwartz for a transitional vehicle fleet management-related consulting services in the Department of Public Works.
That will be placed in Public Works Committee. Moving on to Resolution 103.
Resolution 103 of 2017 was moved by Mr. Johnson, seconded by Mr. Mattson. It's a resolution authorizing the City of Harrisburg to enter into a contract with Power DMS Incorporated for the Police Bureau to subscribe to an online policy training and accreditation management software for law enforcement.
That will be placed in Public Safety Committee. Moving on to Resolution 104.
Resolution 104 of 2017 was moved by Ms. Williams, seconded by Mr. Mattson. It's a resolution authorizing the City of Harrisburg to submit a grant application to the U.S. Department of Transportation for the purpose of funding the Division Street Master Plan project, any portion thereof, or any other qualifying transportation-related work through the Transportation Investment Generating Economic Recovery Tiger Grant Program.
Questions and comments on Resolution 104? Mr. Majors?
No, just a quick comment, and I don't know if we wouldn't mind having the city engineer come up. This is just a, like I said, we're submitting a grant application to look at the master plan for Division Street. I know there's been a lot of community attention focused on trying to improve transportation infrastructure throughout the city. And if Mr. Martin would just be able to give us just a brief overview of the project, since there is some time sensitivity associated to why we're looking to have a vote on this today. Or do I need to suspend the rules?
You need to suspend the rules, Mr.
I'd ask for a
Major.
suspension of the rules to allow Mr. Martin a brief time to explain the master plan project.
Motion by Mr. Majors, have a second? Thank you. Mr. Martin.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry. Please call the vote. Suspension of the rules.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Ms. Daniels?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Martin. You may-
Thank you, Council President. I think everyone's aware of our financial situation with respect to transportation grants and the pledge by the state to provide $10 million in infrastructure improvements, and that is being administered through a multimodal grant that's 100% state funded. So what that does is that puts us in a position, and then we have the Impact Harrisburg grant, which is the matching funds for the state grant, which is local funding. So what that does is all that money then becomes available for a federal grant, and because that's all local monies, and these federal grants have match requirements of 30%, 20%, sorry. So the one common denominator that came up in the comprehensive plan public meetings that I attended, and 6th, 7th, and Division Street corridor public meetings that we had as far as that transportation plan was presented, was a bridge over the railroad tracks at Division Street and tying into Industrial Road. Now, that was first introduced by the city to the Harrisburg Area Transportation Study in 2005 timeframe. No, 2001, I'm sorry, and then taken off in the prior administration because we didn't have local match funding. So it was never, it was on the RTP, Regional Transportation Plan, but never made the tip. So we're in sort of a unique place in history where we're probably not going to have, $16, $17 million worth of eligible matching funds available to build a bridge like this. So when the grant award came out, it's normally a 120-day cycle. This one was cut back to 40 days. It could be the last Tiger grant. We don't know what's going to happen. Okay. But it seemed like the right place, the right time, the right project to put forth this. And the four big reasons, I'll just go over that and then I'll stop talking unless you have any questions, is there was an emergency event at Hack not too long ago, and it was, we couldn't evacuate that. If something like that happens at the farm show, same thing's going to happen. The farm show is a traffic issue every event, and they probably don't have as many events as they'd like to do just because of that reason and the resources that it takes between the state police and the city and everything else. There are plans, I guess I shouldn't say that. The legislation, the state legislature has expressed an intent to redevelop the state hospital grounds. Those additional demands on that traffic is going to be something, and then also the city wants to take back its streets, like 2nd Street, and turn them into, from a three-lane racetrack to a more pedestrian and neighborhood-friendly street, and that'll place additional demands on those corridors like Cameron Street and the McClay Street Bridge and things like that. So those are the big reasons why we think this is a good project, why we think the timing is right to apply for this Tiger grant. They're very competitive. Probably no more than 2 in any given state will be awarded, and we're asking for the max.
What's our matching grant on this?
I'm sorry, what's
What's
that?
our matching grant on this? What's the amount of?
So the matching, so that's the part we're still trying to work out. There will be a cash commitment at some point in time. I'm not 100% sure what it is as I sit here today. I think when we totaled our eligible projects that are underway, we came up with the 16 million, and those fundings came from various sources: Green Light Go grant, multimodal grant, Impact Harrisburg grant, and then the city's budgetary commitments for design for those projects too. Like we've been budgeting design, so I think we came up with 17 million, and that's, but the bridge is probably around 40 million. So we do have a $13 million grant application in for the RCAP grant. So we're looking at other ways to match the federal funds. But as far as the grant application, which is due on the 13th, which we're putting together, we're trying to show all the ongoing projects as the matching funds so that the bridge itself would be, purely federal funding, follow the federal procurement laws, the PennDOT ECMS systems and all that stuff. It's just going to be cleaner and easier if we can do it that way. But I would imagine there'll be some local cash commitment in, the 2022 timeframe when, construction is, normally we budget around 5% overage on any transportation project just to cover ourselves. So.
How will this affect the 7th Street corridor going to the Division Bridge? Division Street Bridge.
The corridor between McClay and Industrial Road would remain a 2-lane, multi-direction road. There may be some right-of-way acquisition up at the intersection of Division and 7th.
Will it affect the homes sitting to the left of that?
Possibly. Possibly. One scenario, and that's, I hate talking about conceptual design, but the one scenario shows part of the plaza being affected. Now, they have, I think, a bank or something on the end that's not used.
It's vacant.
And I'm trying to see if this, it's like truncated. Some of the scenarios I've seen had one. I guess they're not row homes. I think they're duplexes.
Sure.
It had one of them affected. I guess the one at the corner. But
Those
again,
are two, the other two are duplex. They're sitting there by themselves.
Right. Yeah. Like you're talking about the east side of 7th
Sure.
at the intersection Division.
Right.
Yes. So like I said, we haven't laid out all the right of ways and everything, and that comes later on. So I hate to speculate that
Sure.
that house is going, that house is going. Well, I would envision that we would require some additional right of way to construct the bridge. Yeah,
Okay.
Its elevation change is the big thing, and we have double stack railroad cars, and if Norfolk Southern was agreeable and they didn't run double stacks on the outside rails, then that changes a lot of things. But right now, Norfolk Southern actually gave us a letter of recommendation, which is pretty much unheard of. We've had U.S. Congress people saying, how in the world did you get Norfolk Southern to agree to this? But we're so early on, we haven't had those discussions with them. That needs to be flushed out in the design phase. But having said that, just based on what I've seen so far, I think we're going to have some right-of-way impacts, and we've talked to as many of the ones that we know, like D&H Distributing, and they've written a letter of recommendation. They see a value, obviously, to their business.
Yeah, that would take, away from D&H, okay.
And I think Miss Jackie Parker has tried to deal with the property owners of the Uptown Plaza. But again, I would see the business owners would see a big increase in opportunities, and so this is an economic, development grant. So, but yeah, I see that there could be some impacts to the other side of 7th. Nothing would go down on 6th Street. There's some residential on 6th Street as well that we don't see. I don't envision that being impacted.
Okay. Any other questions, council members? Okay, a motion to go back into session. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Thank you.
Okay. Any additional questions and comments on Resolution 104?
Just one quick comment to remind her that this is just a grant application. So we're just putting in, see if we'll be eligible, and if we do, if we are awarded the grant, then those additional conversations would happen. So I'm hoping we can get an affirmative vote on this one. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Hearing none, please call the vote, Mr. Petrowski.
Mr. Allett?
Yes.
Ms. Daniels?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Resolution 104 passes.
Thank you. Moving on to Resolution 105.
Resolution 105 of 2017 was moved by Mr. Majors, second by Mr. Mattson. It's a resolution authorizing the City of Harrisburg to negotiate and enter into a professional services contract with Wallace Montgomery and Associates LLP, design firm, to perform engineering for Second Street Multimodal Project Phase 2, Multimodal Project Phase 2.
And will be placed in Public Works. Moving on to Resolution 106.
Resolution 106 of 2017 was moved by Mr. Majors, second by Mr. Mattson. It's a resolution authorizing the City of Harrisburg to enter into contracts with PP&L Electric Utilities Corporation to convert and furnish electric street lighting delivery service for a total of 223 city streetlights.
That will be placed in Public Works as well. Moving on to Resolution 107.
Resolution 107 of 2017 was moved by Mr. Johnson, second by Mr. Mattson. It's a resolution authorizing the City of Harrisburg to enter into a Comcast Business Service Order Agreement for phone, fax, and internet service for the Bureau of Fire Station Number 1, located at 820 North 6th Street, Station Number 2, 140 North 16th Street, and Squad Number 8, 9 South 13th Street, and other similar agreements subject to the same standard terms and conditions.
Will be placed in Public Safety. Moving on to old business, council members. Any old business?
I have old business.
Okay, Mr. Johnson.
Just want to go back to Mrs. K-Mac situation, because I know it ties into a lot of emails that we get concerning, like, you know, rooming houses versus supportive housing / family, and basically like the process of how that works. So from my understanding, like rooming houses, depending on the zone, is allowable by special exception. So they actually have to apply through the zoning board, which has to approve their use, and they have to meet, I guess, certain code requirements. And then, I guess the other day I just got an email from Jeffrey in regards to supportive housing families, which are permitted by right, and a residential, as an RM, that's residential medium density area, and kind of trying to figure that all out, especially from like a resident's standpoint. So for instance, you know, it seems as though with the, you know, I don't know, you know, 100% of the details, just what was been told to me so far, just based upon that situation, if they were applying for a rooming house and they're saying, you know, they have a business plan in place, it's, you know, it still should call for like the immediate, you know, shutdown of that facility, because we have rooming houses popping up all across the city, and not just from a, you know, a rooming house standpoint. I mean, just not for, you know, what they may be doing inside the rooming house standpoint, but just from a general safety standpoint and making sure it's meeting the code requirements to allow for rooming houses, even to go through the process of the zoning board. So I'm just trying to get a little bit more clarification, even for, you know, residents who are listening, who are coming across these issues inside their neighborhood. And probably, Neil, you'd probably be the best to kind of elaborate a little bit more.
Well, it's a better question for codes in reality, but it's a moving target. It just keeps redefining itself. There are some mixed signals out there from what people are getting from different levels of government. You know, there are facilities for mental health or other treatments that release people into facilities that are privately owned houses, essentially, or apartment complexes that are in reality either a rooming house or a boarding house, depending how you define it. There's some federal issues regarding if it's a rehabilitation facility, whether you can discriminate on people based on you know, what the use of it is. But the reality is there's just not a good overall structure of being made aware of the information until the place is already there, and then codes is chasing it, fire bureaus chasing it, and you know, as they're discovered, things are shut down if they don't comply. But even that, you know, is just is not the easiest thing to do. And I think it is a codes issue where they try to, go out there and address them one by one as the government. Whether you're putting people out on the street with no notice is, I think, always an issue. So I think codes tries to be sensitive to that question. I think they try to give people a fair hearing in the sense of, them presenting to the codes why they're doing what they're doing. They have judges that they take people to when they're not in compliance, and it's just not the fastest process.
And I think it's a factor of different areas of government not working with each other, not from the city, not internally within the city of Harrisburg, but I'm guessing through, I don't want to call out the department, but I don't know who handles like transitional housing for, ex-felons or, those.
It's all over the place. I mean, that's there isn't really a place that, is the center that I'm aware of anyway, that it's a problem for everybody. It's a problem for the county, it's a problem for the prisons, it's a problem for, the state who's releasing people, because everybody has times where they have to let people go and there's got to be a place to move to and report to. And, it's very hard to keep track of everybody, and there's not necessarily a requirement out there other than you get some, when you're on the court side, that you get something that says you have a place to live. Someone signs that document.
So there's no way to kind of, from like our local standpoint of, even from, because I'm all for people transitioning back into society, but we also have to make sure people are transitioning into safe, conducive environments. So I think, I don't know where that connection is of where it's saying that, hey, this place is certified to be a rooming house or whatever it needs to be, it went through the right process, it's allowable. In some places, there's a lot of, I would say, rooming houses and transitional houses who are doing it the right way. And, sometimes that does bring a little unease for the community, but they follow the process and they have, the credentials to be there. But there's more cases where we're running to more rooming houses where they don't have the credentials. And I think, we're constantly putting out these fires, and then we run into these situations where, it becomes more of, trying to preserve the neighborhood or preserve people from being homeless, who are trying to transition back into society. What does that all look like? So I think, I don't know what we can do, from, just a combination of us working together. I'm not saying this is, has to be done by a particular person, but I think it's just from our standpoint to protect, do our best for our city, is to kind of figure out, is that handled on the county level, or depending on what level of, I'm not sure of the system of how that happens, of where people are being approved for places and saying this is okay for you, we're approving you to live here, and then it's not really approved through that jurisdiction.
It's got to be a cooperative level, but there really isn't a structure for this. I mean, for example, we have a place that 20 years ago was authorized to house federal parole and transition coming out. That's been there for quite a long time. They still operate. They're doing some renovations now. They're someone who's been in the system, so to speak, in a real meticulous kind of way. Whether people agree with them or not, at least they go through the process where they see the process. But we have a scam that happens at housing court all the time, where the landlord of a building will say, I just leased it to one person. I had no idea they were making this available for rooms, and they try to defend themselves on that. And that's the challenge of finding someone who can be held responsible for the situation. At the same time, the people putting people in facilities, they just have lots of people out there that need housing that, that there's not really money to fund. And so they end up in these, boarding houses. So we have a boarding house now that neighbors are complaining about, that they were putting 2 people to a room, which is not allowed under our things, but the county was releasing them not knowing our rule, and releasing mental health folks to this facility that made itself available. And, and we just, the rules just sort of trip over each other. So it's something somebody needs to get their hands around in a real way. But it's a constant daily issue for a lot of different people that work in the city and the county.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Ms. Kamak, we'll meet with Mr. Johnson afterwards. Okay. Any other old business, Mr. Majors?
No, I think Councilman Johnson was talking about what I was going to say. The only thing I'm saying is there a way that we can get out of this? It seems like we're in this constant cycle. People are asking for forgiveness rather than permission, and we need to try and change that. I don't know if that's us getting some of our city folks talking to the county folks and making that coordination a little bit better, but, it's, for people that always try to do the things the right way, and then you see things coming into your neighborhood, and it seems to be targeted only certain neighborhoods. And we want to make sure that, every resident feels safe, and we don't have folks coming in. I mean, if it wasn't for a vigilant neighbor pointing this out, I don't know how much attention would have been brought to it by the city until it was too late. So yeah, if we can work on that coordination to this point, I think that'd be great.
Thank you. Moving on to new business, council members, any new business?
Yeah, I guess there's a lot. I got one. So I'm actually pulling up the flyer, but I know most information. October 18th and 19th. 18th will be at Hamilton House.
YMCA, no,
The 18th will be at Camp Curtin YMCA. We will be hosting a Harrisburg Codes meeting to basically go over, policies, procedures of our codes department, frequently asked questions about our codes department, common concerns that are brought to our code officer, and the proper way to kind of funnel that through codes, kind of track that through codes. Is it a codes issue? Is it another department issue? So a lot of those common questions that our citizen have about code issues that are around our neighborhood. We will have our code administrator there, Mr. David Patton. I'll be there as well. Other members of council. So it should be a good time to really be an informative meeting. We'll allow for questions and answers to kind of get those common issues addressed. So that will be October 18th at Camp Curtin YMCA on 6th Street, and then again on October 19th at the Hamilton Health Center. The meetings will start at 5:30 and last till about 8 o'clock at both places. So please, please, please attend. I guess I asked through email that if we can get, through some advertising dollars through our budget, if we can have the communications department push a sponsored Facebook ad. I don't think I've seen that yet, but that's something that we're want to coordinate through our communications department to kind of get that out there so the word gets spread to everyone. But I'm hoping that we have a good attendance at this meeting. I know this was asked for, and a lot of people come to meetings with these type of questions. So I think it's a good forum to kind of really bring that dialogue.
Anything else, council members? I just want to announce that Harrisburg City Council's second annual pre-trick-or-treat Halloween Bash. It's October the 25th, 2017. It's from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. It's the eve of trick-or-treat. It's at two locations, one at the Harrisburg Fire Station Number 1, 1820 North 6th Street, and Harrisburg Fire Station Number 8 at 9 South 13th Street. Snacks, prizes, refreshments, safety tips, and other fun activities for the family. Any other new business, council members? Hearing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.